discuss pain management. We did choose pain management for a reason, and it's because in our insights assessment through the Arthritis Foundation, we found out that 94% of those with arthritis in Florida have reported interference with day-to-day activities due to pain. Now, I myself, having rheumatoid arthritis, can definitely relate to that statistic. So I do know that that is one of the main issues when it comes to arthritis. Now, if you haven't already heard of our insights assessment, I would encourage you to go to arthritis.org/insights, where you can take just a 10-minute assessment. And that assessment is going to give us data that can help the Arthritis Foundation in choosing what we're going to base our programs around, what things we need to focus on. As far as advocacy, it's so important. So once again, go ahead and write that down. It's arthritis.org/insights. And again, it's a really easy assessment. You can just go on there and take it really in just a few moments. I'm so excited about this evening's session, though, because we're going to learn more about mindfulness as a tool for pain management. It is my absolute honor to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Gus Castellanos. Dr. Castellanos is a graduate of the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. He practiced neurology and sleep medicine in Jupiter, Florida for 25 years. He's been practicing mindfulness since 1998 and teaching mindfulness programs since 2009. He's certified to teach MBSR by the University of Massachusetts Center for Mindfulness. And he is trained by the University of Miami's Neuroscience Lab. He's currently teaching at a variety of facilities throughout South Florida. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And if everyone wouldn't mind unmuting for just a second to give a little round of applause. Thank you so much, Dr. Castellanos.
I'll join you. Well, thank you, Ali. I appreciate being here, and thank you, Melissa, the opportunity to be able to share, because this really goes to the essence of what I do in teaching mindfulness in a particular way. Since I am a retired physician, I gravitate to more of the medical issues, if you will, as opposed to some of the other people that are looking for performance enhancement or relaxation or altered state type practices. My preference and the way things worked out, as you can imagine, is mostly in the healthcare, mental and physical health. So thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. It's great to see so many people on the call. I appreciate you being here. So what I'm planning to do here is talk for about 10, 15 minutes on mindfulness. I'm going to assume, and maybe I'm not correct in this, but I'm going to assume you don't know that much, that most people on the call don't know that much about mindfulness, and particularly how mindfulness can help pain. So I'm going to cover that very superficially, but hopefully enough for you to get some idea of how I might be able to help you. And then lead a practice, because in my world, in my experience teaching mindfulness, really to know what it can do for you, it takes a direct experience. Listening to me, reading books, listening to podcasts might give you some vague idea of what goes, but it's nothing compared to having the direct experience. And so after the practice, which will be totally optional, by the way, but after the practice, we should have some time for some question and answers at the end and any comments. So like Ali was saying, I've graduated from medical school, et cetera, and I practiced medicine and neurology mostly in the 90s, early 2000s. And back then, as a neurologist, I was one of the we were primarily the chronic pain doctors at the time, because the pain clinics, legal or illegal as they may have been, were not really flourishing just yet. And so when doctors had given up and says you had the pain, it's been going on, chronic pain, go see a neurologist, they may be able to help. We saw a fair amount of people that way, and we were very good at diagnosing, but didn't have a whole lot of options to treat. So I used anyway a lot of physical therapy. I used a fair amount of alternative medicine because chronic pain was challenging. And it was before the whole opioid crisis, so we weren't dishing out the pills like people have been dishing out lately. at least the opioid type pills. So I had a good experience. What I'm getting at is dealing with chronic pain. And I also ran sleep centers, and I saw how sleep, insomnia, and things like that went together. Fatigue, sleep problems, and pain went together. And sure enough, it was in 1998 when I was introduced to mindfulness in the form of a program called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. This is the program that comes from the University of Massachusetts Medical School, and that's why it appealed to me. Because although I did use enough alternative medicines, I was very skeptical. There was always a lot of, I don't want to insult anybody, but the snake oil salesmen came around quite often selling all kinds of different things, especially for vulnerable populations with pain. So I looked into it and saw there was a fair amount of research already in 1998. And the predominant amount of research done back in 98 was actually on pain. Pain, anxiety, and insomnia were the big three that research was done. Now there's research on a whole bunch of different disorders, problems, and performance enhancement and cognitive skills. So I was sold on it, and I decided to take the course myself because I was having my own problems in the sense of job-related stress and the what you would call physician burnout kind of things back then. So I got to participate in the course, see what mindfulness could do for me, and then I started referring patients to the program. The mindfulness-based stress reduction program is an 8-week program that's based on mindfulness practices, both formally and informally. And again, had a lot of research already back then that it was helpful for chronic pain. So I got to see that in my patients. I also saw how much it helped the people sleep. And so I continued with that program, and that is the University of Massachusetts Center for Mindfulness is who I got trained for. The people who originated that particular program is how I got trained and certified to teach mindfulness. And again, in particular, the MBSR program. That's the bulk of what I teach, but I have taught a whole lot of different programs and workshops and lectures because it's been very universally functional in helping a lot of different things. And I'll try to give you an idea of what all that's about here in the next few minutes. But just to point out, the MBSR program, having that research being an evidence-based practice, can and has been shown to reduce not so much the physical pain, but the perception of the pain and the pain tolerance, and more importantly, or just as importantly anyway, the functional quality of life related to the pain that will improve. So it isn't that mindfulness will help, for instance, reverse arthritis or get rid of a herniated disc. What it does, though, it helps the person tolerate the pain a lot. And also their functional quality of life improves. Their disability scores actually go way up, and they're able to, or they go down, whichever one, they improve, and they're able to function much better. So that's been shown over and over with the MBSR programs, and the MBSR programs have been compared to treatment as usual and be found to be 50% more effective than treatment as usual for chronic pain. And this includes everything, whether it's arthritic low back pain or chronic tension headaches or post-injury pains of some kind of muscle. So it's not just arthritic pain, but over time, it's also been shown that mindfulness, by reducing the pro-inflammatory genes, actually at the gene level, can reduce inflammation. And hence, it's been pretty useful. The first of this work was actually done in, believe it or not, psoriasis. So psoriasis being somewhat of an autoimmune disease, it was shown to be improved by people who practice mindfulness. But it's now been shown to be helpful in rheumatoid arthritis, as well as the arthritis related to other conditions. So both the pain perception being improved and the inflammation being improved can be very helpful in people with rheumatoid and other autoimmune arthritic conditions. And so this is why I gravitated to that particular program. And as I'll get to in a moment, it also is very useful for the reactivity to pain, the anxiety, and the so-called stress produced by the change in life, if you will, the alteration of your lifestyle from the chronic pain. But more recently, I started looking into something called mindfulness-oriented recovery enhancement, which is another 8-week program. This one comes from the University of Utah. And the doctor there, Dr. Eric Garland, and I have communicated, and I got trained to teach his program because his took it to a next level. He added in some elements of cognitive behavioral therapy, which is, the thinking behavioral therapy, which has been very useful in chronic pain as a separate entity. But he took mindfulness, added CBT to it, and then he also added elements of what's called positive psychology and put that into a program. And the program has been so successful in chronic pain that he actually has $25 million from the National Institute of Health recently to study it even further. One thing that he's finding also is that not only is there improvement in the pain-related function and the perception of pain and the quality of life issues, just like an MBSR, but the people in these programs that he's doing have been on opiates. They reduce their opioid use and they reduce opioid misuse. So that so people that sometimes they're not necessarily opioid addicts, but they can get all messed up with the narcotics if you're taking them and you're not really sure. So it has a double whammy on that. And that, I think, is why it's gotten so much attention from the National Institutes of Health and other organizations, because of the opioid crisis and the overprescribing that goes on with the doctors. But needless to say, both of these programs, MBSR and more, mindfulness-oriented recovery enhancement, are of course mindfulness-based, and it's the mindfulness that where it all starts, if you ask me. And then finally, I'll talk about it was a voluntary experimental pain program. So it wasn't chronic pain or arthritic pain, but at Wake Forest University, they did a program where they took induced experimental pain, and they studied their brains before and after the mindfulness training. And they compared the mindfulness to training to relaxation training and a placebo painkiller, as well as no treatment at all. And what they found was that the subjective relief of pain was highest in the mindfulness group, then the relaxation group, then the placebo group, and then there was no change in the control group, of course. But the interesting part for me was that the brain scans showed different parts of the brain were affected by each of the groups, suggesting that this mindfulness is not a placebo effect. It actually, again, subjectively, people had better relief of pain and different parts of the brain changed in placebo or relaxation. So something else is going on in there, and we're not really sure what it is as yet, but I think that lends the credibility and the power of what mindfulness can do for a lot of conditions, particularly in chronic pain. So I didn't define what mindfulness is. I usually try not to do that at the beginning, but let me do it here now. So to begin with, though, mindfulness there's no one clear agreed upon definition. Many different definitions depending on where this comes from and such. This is a practice that's adopted from the Buddhist tradition. And to be clear, I'm not a Buddhist or a Buddhist scholar. I came to mindfulness, as I said, through the medical need through the medical doorway. And so the definitions in the Buddhist world is going to be a little different than in the medical world and in the therapy world and in the philosophical world. The definition that we use is the one that was that's in the MBSR program, because that's the program that we teach the most. But they're all very similar. But this is the way we define it. Mindfulness is the awareness that arises from paying attention in a particular way. And that way is on purpose, in the present moment, non-judgmentally. And so what we'll be doing when we practice mindfulness is simply that. We're just going to be paying attention to what is happening in this moment in a non-judgmental way or a friendly way or a curious way. And we do that over and over and over with our practices, formally or informally. This is not a practice to cause relaxation, to quiet the mind, to make you get into an altered state, to feel better, to even reduce your pain or your anxiety. It's a practice to just be present with whatever is happening in that moment. So if you want to leave now, oh no, what? Yeah, so sometimes that happens in my classes, but I'll say it this way, for obviously because of the research and for the experience of so many millions of people now that practice mindfulness, when we pay attention in this particular way, present moment, non-judgmentally, etc., the mind tends to quiet, the body tends to relax, the sleep improves, the pain goes down, anxiety and depression also improve. And again, the whole host, the inflammatory genes start changing, etc. So we have the we want to separate out the intention to reduce the pain. While it may bring you to a mindfulness class, what I always suggest is keep an open mind and just do the practices over and over and see what happens. Because sometimes the pain may not be that much reduced, but something else in your life improves that you weren't expecting. What I hear a lot is people coming in that are stressed out and they want the reduction in stress, and they end up getting better relationships with their kids. And that is so much more powerful for them than their stress that they don't even worry about their stress, ironically. Things start happening, but it'll be something that you will find useful, not necessarily that the teacher or the doctor says is good for you. You will say, this is good for me. So that's sort of the way we sort of frame it. And if you it may be hard without doing the practice yet, but what we'll be doing is counterintuitive to what we mostly are used to doing, particularly for unpleasant things like pain and anxiety and sadness and insomnia and anger. All the unpleasant emotions and sensations, we're actually going to turn towards those feelings and sensations rather than run away from or suppress, deny, or what a lot of times causes us to suffer more. Start with the story, start bracing, start playing the victim, poor me, I'm always like this. And so we learn to turn towards, and particularly with pain, to turn into the physical sensations and really just be with the physical sensations and noticing how the stories get in the way, and just let the stories go and just explore, investigate the sensations, if you will. So it is counterintuitive. We're sort of befriending our pain. I just need to warn you when we do this practice, because it will be a practice where we'll make this a simple practice of just following the breath, but I also make suggestions on turning towards the pain. If you're new to it, use your judgment, and if you need to, just stop the practice if you're suffering too much. But if you can bear with it a moment or two, you might find something new, even if it's just like a second or two of being with the pain for the first time. So again, I don't know you all, so I'm not sure how much pain you are in this moment, for that matter, let alone for the chronicity of it. But practicing with the unpleasantness now will give you some tools to be able to deal with the pain as you go through your everyday life. We start noticing that this pain, of course, is a whole body problem. It's in the body, it's in the emotions, it's in the thoughts, and we start teasing that apart, noticing how much the thoughts and the stories create more suffering than the actual pain itself. So that's kind of in a nutshell how this works out. But again, I can talk about it forever. It will be much easier if we just go into a practice. So with that said, if you care to join me, this practice will be about 15 or 20 minutes. It's a pretty straightforward practice. Awareness of breath practice with instructions on how to turn towards the unpleasant, uncomfortable sensations. But it is voluntary. There's no forcing to be done here. If you prefer not to do the practice, just sit this out, do whatever you need to be doing for the next 20 minutes. But if you care to join me, And the rest of us that will be practicing, I'll just guide you through it. It's a very guided and, not going to say wordy practice, but I'll be very explicit on what you should be doing as we go through this. So taking a moment to find yourself in a comfortable seated position, or if it is better for you to be lying down, feel free to lie down. Because again, these practices are about paying attention and the quality of the attention. The practices are not about the position that you're in. And you can allow the eyes to close or lower the gaze. It's always your choice in our world. Keep the eyes open or to lower simply lower the gaze. Feeling into the contact of the body on the seat that you're on. Feeling into that sense of being grounded on the seat that you're on. Knowing that that seat is grounded on the floor of the building you're in, which is grounded in the earth. And then also feeling a sense of being supported. You'll be supported by the seat you're on, and that support comes with no effort on your part, so you can trust that you'll be supported through this practice. Grounded and supported. And then becoming aware of the state of the body in this moment. Just checking in. The condition of the body. Is it tired? Is it energized, restless, calm, cold, warm, neutral temperature? Just noticing the state of the body in this moment. It doesn't really matter how it's feeling. It's just being aware that we're bringing that non-judgmental attitude to whatever we're feeling the body. And then noticing the state of the mind. Is it full of thoughts or mostly empty of thoughts? Thoughts that are moving quickly, thoughts that are moving slowly. And again, it really doesn't matter. We're just noticing the state of the mind in this moment. And when you're ready, bringing the attention to your breath. There's no need to breathe in any special way. Just noticing the natural breath, whatever rhythm it's in. Becoming aware of the sensations of the air moving in and out of the nostrils. You might notice that the air coming in is cooler than the air coming out. You might notice these little tiny muscles in the nostrils that flare or expand as you breathe in and then release as you breathe out. Just noticing the sensations of the breath at the nostrils as you breathe naturally. And perhaps you're noticing already the mind begins to wander. The thoughts, the feelings, the sounds, images, memories. If the mind is wandering, that's okay, because that's what minds do. No need to get upset or feel like you're doing anything wrong. Just notice that the mind is wandering off and where it's wandered off to. Acknowledging that thought or that distraction. Letting it go. And gently but firmly returning the focus back to the breath. With each passing breath, becoming more focused, more aware. And when you notice the mind begin to wander again, remembering it's okay, not a problem. Just noticing where the mind has wandered off to, acknowledging and accepting that that has happened. You might even say something like, in the space of your own mind, it's okay to have this thought or feeling right now. And then letting it go and gently and firmly returning the attention back to the breath. And if you start noticing stronger sensations, particularly the unpleasant, uncomfortable, painful sensations coming up, you can bring kind attention to them, allowing them to be there. And then begin to investigate, noticing the sensation. Is it a heat, a tightness, a sharpness? Are there thoughts and feelings associated with the sensation? Can you notice if the sensation has a shape, a center, edges? Perhaps the sensation is solid or not solid. Perhaps there are spaces inside the sensation where the sensation is not. And if the sensation becomes too intense, you can redirect your attention back to the breath at the nostrils, turning your attention away from the discomfort, focusing on the feeling of the air moving in and out of the nostrils as you breathe. And when you're noticing these uncomfortable sensations, you can always return your attention back to the breath as a way to recenter yourself, as a way to step back from the sensation. And also, if it feels right to you, you can imagine yourself breathing right into the intense sensations in the body. Imagine that you can send your breath right into that part of the body, breathing into that sensation to soften it, allowing the breath and the attention to sink into this part of the body like water seeping into soil. And then noticing what happens to the sensation. And you notice how it's changing. Perhaps gradually getting weaker, perhaps getting stronger, and then reaching a peak and then getting weaker. Is the quality changing? Does the heat become a warmth, the tightness a heat, the sharpness a tingling? Is the location changing? Is the shape, the center, the edges changing? And when you're ready, you can always let the sensation go and bring the attention back to the breath. A natural breath at the nostrils. And so you can do this again and again. Investigating the painful, uncomfortable sensations, qualities, the shape, the intensity. And then redirect the attention to the breath, and then consider breathing into the sensation, the painful sensation, and then letting it go. Returning to the breath again and again. If the mind's wandered off again, acknowledging that thought, feeling, or distraction, letting it go, gently and firmly returning the focus of the attention back to the breath. And doing so without judging, without criticizing. No need to give yourself a hard time if that's happening even a lot. As many times as the mind wanders away and you note that many times, bringing it back to the breath, back to the practice, back to the present moment. Or each time that you notice the mind has wandered off and you become aware that the mind has wandered off, acknowledging that thought, that distraction, and then you return the attention back to the practice, you're strengthening your mindfulness. Each time you return your attention back to the breath, you're learning to step back, to step back, to step back from your thoughts and feelings and into the clear, open space of mind. And soon you may begin to notice that sensations, thoughts, feelings, images, memories come and go all on their own, like clouds passing in a clear blue sky, like clouds drifting. These thoughts come out of nowhere, change shape, and then fade into the distance, all on their own. And there's no need to hold on to the thoughts or push them away. You can just let them go. And a part of the mind is like those thoughts passing like clouds, but there's a deeper part of the mind that is more like the space in which the clouds pass. We call the observing awareness, that is open, vast, spotless, and free. Just watching, just observing, peacefully, non-reactive to whatever's happening. And if you care to, you can focus your attention on that part of the mind, the open awareness that is vast, spotless, and free, just observing. Or you can continue to focus your attention on your breathing, your choice for the last few minutes here. Focusing on that deeper part of the mind, the awareness that allows all the different activity to come and go through it, or focusing on your breath. And now you can take a few long moments to focus on the best part of this experience, appreciating and savoring whatever positive thoughts and feelings have come up for you in this practice, focusing on these experiences now. And remembering you can return to this state of mindfulness whenever you need to by simply bringing your attention back to your body, to your breath, to the present moment. It's always available for you. And so when you're ready, you might be feeling a little more comfortable, a little more centered, a little more hopeful about the future. When you're ready, with an awareness of doing so, lifting the gaze, opening the eyes if they've been closed, returning the attention back to the group, I guess, that we call it. And also listening to your body if it needs to be stretched or moved. Please feel free to do so. If you need to stand up, take a walk, get something to drink, again, feel free to do so as well. And so thank you, and thank yourself. Happy to take any comments or feedback. And just a quick, happy to take questions in any way you all want to go, but in our courses, in the mindfulness-based programs that we teach, I think one of the powers in it is the what we call inquiry process after a practice. And that really just says something like, if anybody wants to share what they noticed in this practice, what was your direct first-person experience of what happened here, sharing from that place. And that becomes just as useful of a practice as what we just did. but I'm again wide open here. If you just want to ask simple questions, research questions, etc., that's fine. So
thank you so much, Dr. Castellanos. Do we have any questions that anyone has that they thought of? You can type them into the chat as well. And I do have a couple of questions that were submitted beforehand, so we'll go ahead and start with those while people are perhaps still thinking about what they'd like to ask. Would you say that there's a recommended number of hours or time per week to practice mindfulness for best results?
yeah, that question comes up a lot, and it's changed over the years, believe it or not, from the researchers and such. It all depends on, somewhat depends on what you're looking for when you say get the best results. So what are you looking, just to be a little more focused, a little more grounded, a little more peaceful, or reducing pain a lot, or getting better sleep? It's going to change the recommendations. So what the broad recommendations that I make now is to start a regular practice. And regular doesn't mean daily anymore for me. You can think about this as you start a regular exercise program at a gym, that you might just start at first going Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And you go for an hour to the gym. So you do 20 minutes or 10 minutes of mindfulness practice 3 days a week. That regularity is going to be more important, I think, over time than a specific amount of time in a program that's this and that. So again, depending a little bit on what the intention behind the practice is, will vary, but just do something regularly.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Did anyone else have questions or comments? All right. Well, another question which would definitely interest me as well is I've seen several mindfulness apps, and I've actually used a few myself. I wanted to know if you had any in particular that you would recommend.
Again, it depends on what you're looking for. So the popular ones, Headspace, Insight Timer, Calm, they're very useful if you're using them simply to remind yourself to do something, keep the regular practice. And then of course they have some little gimmicks that are also helpful. But my feeling is, especially if you're new, it's really going to be very, very helpful if you can hook up with a live person that can give you feedback, whether it's a teacher or a group that's practicing similar practices. Because if you're listening to the app, you might be thinking, hey, I'm doing this great because I'm falling asleep every time and I'm doing great. And that may not be correct. You may need to tweak that practice and do something else. Where it's usually the other way around, mostly is people think they're not doing it right because their mind's still wandering, so they give up on the app. They only use it to, for instance, to feel calm. I'm all stressed out. Oh, I listened to the app and I felt calm. Sort of like a quick fix for that problem. Nothing major wrong with that, but you're missing out a lot if you're not getting some kind of feedback. So I don't have any major recommendations. If you wanted to go a little deeper into mindfulness itself and know more about the background, the apps that I'm more in tune for are the ones by Sam Harris, which is a Waking Up app, and the one by Dan Harris, which is the 10% Happier app. So they do a lot more with traditional mindfulness and bringing it in together. There's more to it than just simply being calm or being relaxed.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It looks like we do have a question in the chat from Kathy Rogers. Thank you for your question. Does it matter the time of day to do the practice?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. So in the 8-week classes, when we're doing these classes, get courses in, so it's a little bit different, because we say for the next 8 weeks we're going to ask you to listen to the recording every day. That's part of it. That's what the home assignment is for the class. And when that question comes up, it's really whatever time you can do it that you will get it done. And again, these classes, we want people to do it every day, as opposed to what I said before. So the answer is, if you can't do it in the morning and you can do it in the afternoon, so be it. And the next day you may have to do it in the evening rather than the morning, so be it. Whenever you can get it done. But if you wanted to have the general picture, most people will agree that doing it first thing in the morning is the best time to do it on a practical basis because you get it out of the way. But there's also what you would call a spiritual background in that most of the people, whether it's a Christian prayer or another contemplative practice or straight up mindfulness, something to be done in those early dawn hours, that something else goes on along those ways. So there's a lot of tradition to do it first thing in the morning.
Excellent. Very interesting. Now, it looks like there's a follow-up question of where would you find a class? How would you recommend finding a class to go to?
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking that. I can just tell you about my classes first. Generally, because I'm in South Florida, my classes were all over South Florida. But now, since the pandemic, all my classes have gone to Zoom. So I have a few classes that I do it. I just started an 8-week class, the MBSR class. If you're interested in that, I can get you in. It started last night, and it's okay to start today, even though you missed class 1. So that's one opportunity to do this mindfulness-based stress reduction course. But I also do a weekly drop-in that's free. It's on Zoom. Also, it's Tuesdays at 11 a.m. And basically, you just show up. And so I can give you my email, and you can just send my email to anybody who wants to interested in either one of those. I'm happy to hook you up with either one of those. So. On top of that, there's a whole lot of other people that I know do classes out there, and I can point you the way. Some are more nationally known people and some of the local teachers that I know here in South Florida. So, and I'm going to assume that everybody realizes for the moment, I think through the end of the year, everything's going to be virtual. We're not doing live classes. And so.
Excellent. Yeah, if you don't mind getting your email for us, that would be wonderful. Let's see. We have another question, which is, does mindfulness have to be centered the way you centered us? Could it be music, for example, as a background? So is adding music helpful? I guess would be a question.
Yeah. So by the way, I put my email address in the chat box. If anybody wants to just send me an email and remind me that you're looking for this or that. So I would have to ask from that person. I don't need to do this right now, but what are you using the music for? Why would you want the music in the background? And I know a lot of people says, "Oh, it distracts me. It makes me more calm. It's soothing, etc." So right away you start noticing that you're trying to manipulate the way you're feeling to feel a certain way. Now, there may be nothing wrong with that, except if we continue to do that. I'm feeling terrible, but I put on music, I feel good. I'm feeling terrible, I put music, I feel good. I'm feeling terrible, I've put music, I feel good. And not stopping to realize, wait a minute, what about the cause of why I feel terrible? Am I missing something by just sort of placating, putting a Band-Aid over why I'm doing this? So that would be the one caution. Now, if it's some other practical issue where there's a lot of noise, construction noise, and it's just really hassling and it's all that, it's better to drown out the noise with music. That would be a different answer. With mindfulness, like I said before, we're just trying to be with whatever's happening. And if it's right now very challenging because your mind's too busy and the music would help, we would say practice with that busy mind. You learn something from that busy mind. See what you can do by investigating what's happening rather than running away from it or suppressing it. So again, we're not totally opposed to it. We just be a little bit careful with mindfulness, what the intention behind the music is.
Another question, which I think could be especially helpful for those of us with arthritis, is what is your recommendation if sitting is painful?
For doing the mindfulness practices, this is another why I love the MBSR programs and the MORE programs. Is you do it in whatever position that suits you, and it may be different every time. Maybe sitting in a recliner. I knew a woman that did it in a hammock. A good friend of mine had real significant chronic jaw pain, had a lot of surgery on her jaws and all that. She couldn't lay down and couldn't sit. She did the practice similar to what we just did today on a treadmill 40 minutes on a treadmill listening to the recording, and she seemed to work for her. So the practices are about paying attention on purpose, non-judgmentally. It's not about a position. If you can't sit, find a position that you can sit, or sorry, that you can listen to the recordings.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Any other last questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you once again, Dr. Castellanos, for your insight, for your tips, and especially for a practice that we got to engage in tonight together. That's so awesome that we got to put it to use. Before we close, I did want to go ahead and mention the Live Yes Arthritis Network. And if you're not already plugged into the network, I really invite you to join us in our amazing community. All you have to do is go to arthritis.org/liveyes, and you can find a connect group in your area. Obviously, right now we're doing virtual connect groups, but this is a community where you can connect with your fellow arthritis warriors, get resources, and impact the future of the Arthritis Foundation. So that's really a great resource. Once again, arthritis.org/liveyes. And that is a community built for you especially. So our next session for pain management is going to be next Monday, so please don't miss out on it. It's on the 28th at 6 p.m. It's going to be a Facebook Live event with Florida Orthopedic Institute, where you can learn more about the interventional pain management treatment options. So I wanted to once again have people, if you feel comfortable, unmute and give a big round of applause for Dr. Castellanos. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I so appreciate it. Thank you all for all you do, by the way. I'm really grateful that you've brought the people together and are trying to help out as much as I can. So I'm happy to help out. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
It's been wonderful. Everyone have a great evening, and thanks for coming.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.